Peace and love, family. Welcome to another powerful discussion with your sister, Dr. Ma'at. Family, you see the title, Jillian Michaels, right? This is supposed to be, I think she's like a exercise guru and some type, I know she's some sort of popular personality. But anyway, you see the title, Jillian Michaels, okay, and Donald Trump. Both of them downplayed slavery this week. And it's all over the internet right now. A lot of people are talking about it. Jillian Michaels went on CNN, and I'm going to let you hear. I'm going to press play so you can hear her words. But literally, she went on CNN and had the audacity to say that in 1860, only 2% of white Americans owned, she said slaves, but you know the word I like to use, family. I like to use the word captives, Ashe. And so she went online, but she used the word slave. She said only 2% of white Americans owned slave in 1860. She also said that she's tired of white people being depicted as the bad people. Okay. And I'm going to let this clip run for about 2 minutes so you can listen to that. And then Donald Trump came behind her. Okay. And he started talking about the Smithsonian Museum down in DC. If you haven't taken your children to the museum down there, make sure that you go down there. You better go see it before they start stripping the exhibits off of the floor. Cause I'm already hearing that they're shipping some exhibits out of there. Okay. And so give thanks. I've already been a few times, but if you haven't been down there, family, make sure you go. So he comes behind her and he's like, yeah, these museums are displaying all this. He call it wokeism. And slavery, he said, wasn't that bad. And so, family, you already know that when this happened, I had to go get my Jegna, my warrior Baba Mwalimu Baruti to unpack this. Anybody, you all know Baba Baruti has a book out. I want all of you to get it. It's called Kebuka. Okay, Kebuka. Remembering the middle passage through the lenses or through the eyes of our ancestors. And he walks us back in time and he talks about how horrific it is. But see, family, we can only fight back when we have the knowledge to fight back. Ashe. And so anyway, had to reach out to him to unpack this with me. All right, family. But before I bring up our Baba, our Jegna, our scholar, our warrior scholar, I just want to play Jillian Michaels' words. So you know that this is not Dr. Ma'at saying anything, that wasn't said. So here we go, family. Listen. Oh, here we go. I'm hitting the button, family. Hold on. Let me. You
cannot tie imperialism and racism and slavery to just one race, which is pretty much what every single exhibit does. But let's talk about the fact that when you anti-slavery, let's talk about the fact that
slavery in America was.
Do you realize that only less than 2% of white Americans own slaves?
But it was a system of white supremacy.
You realize that slavery is thousands of years old?
White people.
Do you know who was the first race to try to end slavery? Well, what's controversial?
I'm very surprised.
This is an extraordinary exercise in historical revisionism.
I'm really surprised.
Do you realize that,
Jillian, I'm surprised that you're trying to litigate who was the beneficiary of slavery and
I'm
who
not.
was not.
What I'm trying to tell you is
in
that
the context of American history.
Okay.
In the context of American history, what are you saying is incorrect by saying that it was white people oppressing black people?
Every single thing is like, oh, no, this is all because white people bad. And that's just not the truth. Like, for example, every single exhibit, I have a list of every single one. Like, people migrated from Cuba because white people bad. Not because of Castro. Yes, no, it's in there. That's what I'm saying. You don't actually know what's in there. Do you know that when you walk in the front door, the first thing you see is the gay flag?
Jillian, you have a lot of stuff in front of you.
Yeah, I do,
what
because
exactly
because here's the thing.
Are you talking about?
Okay, I'll give you an example.
Yeah, please.
There's one called Change Your Game, right? This has been an installation there. Is gender testing fair in sports? Does that, and then it goes on to talk about how it's complex to do gender testing in sports. It's not complex. It's basic science. That's untrue. It's XX chromosome, XY chromosome. That's sports. Is it fair to have biological men competing against biological women in sports? No, but
now she's conflating a whole bunch of stuff, family. That ain't the part I got hot on. I got hot on the part about slavery, but I'm gonna keep on playing the clip.
Why is this in the Smithsonian? So it's been completely captured.
First of all, I don't.
And it's totally partisan.
First of all, we don't have time to litigate all of this.
Of course we don't, because then you're going to lose the argument. Everything is racialized, just like you're trying to do to me now.
Excuse me.
It's like, I can't believe you're trying to suggest, that slavery
just to be clear, you brought up race.
No,
this was a conversation about the arts, and you brought up race.
It isn't.
You brought up,
but the whole point of this is that the issue
you brought up slavery, and you brought up the question of whether you brought up the question of whether or not slavery in the United States is about race. The answer is
no, I
yes.
Didn't. I did not say
in the United States.
Don't straw man my argument, because that's not what I said.
So what are you
brought
talking
up
about?
Slavery, and what I was talking about is that this isn't really about that. When you make every single exhibit about white imperialism when it isn't relevant at all, that is a problem. So when you're talking about Cubans leaving Cuba and you make it about white people bad, that's not accurate.
Can I just say something?
That's my point.
All right, we're going to move on from that.
You cannot tie.
So, and then I don't like how she kind of conflated slavery with LGBTQ issues. Like, that was bananas. Then she said white imperialism is irrelevant. You know, she said so much. I mean, it's so much to unpack here. And so Donald Trump then follows up with a tweet. Okay. He follows up with a tweet, and I'm reading over here on the right-hand side. So he follows up on August the 19th with a tweet. He says, the museums throughout Washington, but all over the country, are essentially the last remaining segment of woke. The Smithsonian is out of control, where everything discussed is how horrible our country is, how bad slavery was, and how unaccomplished the downtrodden have been. He said nothing but success, nothing about success, nothing about brightness, nothing about the future. Okay. He said, we are not going to allow this to happen. And I have instructed my attorneys to go through the museums and start the exact same process that has been done with the colleges and universities, where tremendous progress has been made. This country cannot be woke, because woke is broke. We have the hottest country in the world, and we want people to talk about it, including in our museums. Donald Trump has never been to the Smithsonian Museum. Let me tell you, he's never been. Because if he had been to the Smithsonian Museum, he would know that only the bottom floor talks about slavery. Then you keep going all the way up until you get to the top floor, which talks about the strides, the achievements that our people made right here in America. So for him to act like the museum is just talking about how bad America is, that's not true. That's not true at all, family. And so anyway, family, I had to bring on my Jegna, the great Baba Mwalimu Baruti, to help me unpack this. So after you see my intro, after you see and hear my intro, the next voice you will hear is the voice of our Baba Mwalimu Baruti. Abibi Fahodie.
Let's combat and fight back with maltracks. The war of the minds, they want control of the masses. And Common Core, they dumb us down in the classes. Without knowledge, we can't gain access. Build with the elders, take notes and write classes. We keep whining on the block, how it's gonna stop? Let's start supporting our own, make their supply drop. We buy stocks, then we buy blocks. Cause we know the truth and we tuned in to Dr. Maya.
Abibi Fahodie, Abibi Tumi, Abibi Wan. Peace to all of my thinkers, truth speakers, and truth seekers. Welcome to another Truth to Power Talk with your sister, Dr. Ma'at. Thank you for joining another powerful discussion. And tonight I have with me another powerful guest, but he is no stranger to the community, Baba Mwalimu Baruti. Peace and love to you, Baba. How are you feeling tonight?
How you doing, Dr. Ma'at? Everything is good except for this little bit of righteous rage. It doesn't happen like this often, but when you messaged me and told me about this, India and I have been having discussions about that since then. And, the best word that we can come up with is stupidity. I cannot understand. I can't understand. You have to ask, why are statistics like this brought up? What is the purpose? What are they supposed to do? Because, all words have meaning, but why would someone come up with nonsense like this? And I'm going to show you nonsense, but why would someone come up with some nonsense like that? And then it's sort of like when someone turns on you, you don't look at that person, you look at who's agreeing with them. So you'll know who's against you that, stand in the shadows. So it's like, I'm looking at us. I'm looking at so many of us and we're applauding. We've been applauding this nonsense for a while, and it has been progressive. that's one aspect that we're really not looking at. We're not looking at this growing in momentum because they are changing this. You can't, this isn't the fetus. You can't stop that. They do what they do. The problem is that we're not doing the things that need to be done to stop this from getting into the minds of our children as truth. So I have like, I don't know how many notes I have in front of me. But it's like when I'm looking around with us, and I'm going to get to that point. When I'm looking around at us, terms like the new Negro, quote unquote revolutionary Negroes. When I hear the letters YN, I'm thinking young Negroes, because that's what I'm seeing in our classrooms. That's what I'm articulating out here, making all this noise about, oh, you know, it's irrelevant. But all of this is designed to exonerate, to clear Europeans of all guilt related to the destruction of African people. That's the whole purpose here. Okay, we can say Trump, and of course he's like a spearhead for this, but I remember when Wallace became the governor of Alabama, and the realization came that if the people of Alabama, if the white people, a bunch of the black people in Alabama didn't agree with him, he would have been governor the next day. So apparently there is a huge segment of the white population, and my understanding is a huge segment of the black population that believes that Trump is correct. Right. And it wouldn't make a difference if it was Trump or whoever. It's time for that in terms of their calendar. For these Negroes, and the last point on this, for these Negroes, the goal is what it has always been, to be sub-assimilated into European society. They don't see anything wrong with what Europeans did. In fact, they applaud that, because they don't see themselves anything like African. So things like that is going to catch on like wildfire among them. The last thing that they want to be is who they are. But I want to look at this statistic real quick. I had 2 years worth of statistics, and this is another thing. When they play something so stupid on us and we buy it, this is fundamental basic statistics. Like I had half a year undergrad and a year and a half of statistics in grad school, and this is simple statistics, just real simple statistics. So she said only 2%, and I looked at the South. You know, it took me about maybe 5 minutes. I looked at the South, the South with a capital S, and I looked at the whole country. 2% of whites. I'm just trying to get a number because we're not even thinking about what that would mean, regardless of whether it's right or wrong. If one African was enslaved, that's too many. That's right. If one European was involved, that's too many. And of course, as I talk about at K-Buka and some other places, everybody benefits from what they do as a family. They are one. If they weren't one, then they wouldn't be in the position that they're in, and we wouldn't be in the position that we're in. They don't have to get on the phone and have the conversation. They do what they want to. And I really strongly suggest folks reading the numbers essay in my book, Your Reason. A lot of people run from that book because it seems academic, but it's like common sense look at academia in terms of different subjects. But that's a whole nother discussion. So 2%. She said 2%. In 1865, I got so many notes here.
Come on, Baba. I'm here. I'm here for it. I'm here for it.
1865, there were 8 million Europeans in the South. In 1865, there were 3.5, according to one. It goes up to like 4.2, 4.5. 8 million Europeans in the South, southern states, and 3.5 enslaved Africans, 3.5 million. 8 million Europeans, 3.5 million Africans. And we can say you had some quote unquote free, in sociology, we call quasi-free, because they weren't really free. They're still walking around scared to breathe. 2%, this is the South, 2% of 8 million is 160,000. Right. So that would mean 160,000 Europeans in the South were responsible for the enslavement of African people. She makes it appear like it was 2. It was 160,000 of them in the South. 2% of 8 million is 160,000. Let's think about the size of that number. What does that mean? Because most of us are going to see 160,000. Well, most of us are going to see 2%, and we're going to think that it's negligible. It doesn't mean anything. 2%. I mean, you about to say 1%. is nothing in the scheme of things. 98% were not involved in the enslavement of African people. But if only 2% were involved in the South in the enslavement of African people, that would be 160,000 Europeans. Not 10, not 20, not 100, not 1,000, 160,000. 160,000 Europeans would be involved in the enslavement of African people if it was only 2%. If it was only 2% of all whites in this country, which I believe that was her wording. If it was only 2% of all Europeans in this country, there were 26.9 million Europeans in this country in 1865. 26.9 million Europeans in this country in 1865, according to their statistics. That would mean that 538,000 of them would be involved in the enslavement of African people, because 2% of 26.9 million is 538,000. This is basic. A fifth grader could do this, and we're having debate. They're having debates and arguments, and we're sitting up here listening to this like it doesn't mean like it's ooh, that's wow, that means that none of them were involved, especially the one I'm sleeping with. You know, none of them had anything to do with that whatsoever. 538,000 was what came out of her mouth. She said in this country. That's over 500,000 people. That's over 500,000 Europeans involved in the direct enslavement of African people. They play with numbers. And because we're not used to how they play with statistics, we don't get it because they're going to give us the statistic that makes it look the best for them. That's what they do. So when it's like when you look at what's been going on in the media over the last 30 years, the statistics that have to do with them getting hurt, they've increased. When I was a child, it was like 2 million European Jews were, and it wasn't all European Jews, but they don't talk about that either. It was only 2 million European Jews were burnt by Hitler, were gassed by Hitler. Now it's like 6 million. So the statistics about them, that's bad. They rise, they increase.
Right, increases.
They increase. The statistics that have to do with us, the statistics that have to do with bad stuff that they did, bad stuff that happened to us, they go down. So now we've gone to understanding that this is a European product. Our enslavement was a European product. The Ma'afa was a European product. It was toward the destruction of African people, and it is not stopped. That number, somehow magically, the Europeans involved has gone down. And when you talk to young white folks, I didn't have my hand in it, my grandfather. But for other things, yes, I am my ancestors. Okay?
Facts,
so
Baba.
For them, you know, it's to me, it's fundamental. We get so angry, so righteously enraged, which we should. Don't twist what I'm saying. We should.
That's right.
But when that happens, it's like in the principles of Ott said that I will not, have hot anger. What they meant was you don't get angry to the point where you can't think. And I've been there, and I'm sure probably everybody here has been there at some point in time in their life where you are so angry, you know, everything turns red. You just want to kill. You just want to take out. You just, whatever.
Right.
The ancestors said, don't get red angry. Don't get angry to the point where you can stop thinking. I don't know if it's because that's where we immediately go, or because we don't look at the statistics and the quote unquote facts that they give because we don't feel that we're qualified, because we still believe they're the experts. But we don't stop and think about exactly what does that mean. I immediately went and said, okay, well, what's 2%? That was my first thought. Because I know they lie. That's automatic. I'm not trusting anything they say, which is another part of our issue as well, where we say question everything, but we don't stop for a second and think. Question those things that are wrong. We start questioning everything, even things that make sense for us. 2% doesn't make sense, so it should be questioned. That doesn't make sense based upon what I understand from the South in terms of the numbers. Period. Okay, the South was built on the enslavement of African people. How can only 2% be involved? Most of the large plantations, maybe 2% of the large plantations were, or maybe 2% of the plantations were large. Okay, now I'm very much aware of the smallness in the number of the largest plantations, but you had hundreds and hundreds of small plantations. Yeah, many plantations where there might be a white family and a black family, or a white family and a black female, like in the major Ivy League schools in this country. Okay, but the point would be that it couldn't have been like we're thinking when we say 2%. So if you came from a party and you one of the brothers and you said, man, I had to leave because only 2% of the people there were women. Well, that would give me the idea, well, maybe there was 1 or 2 or 3 sisters hanging on the wall because there were so many brothers they couldn't breathe.
Right.
I'm thinking extremely small. If you said 1% to me, 2%, 3%, something, I'm gonna say extremely small. There was less than 1/4 of 1% of black students at the University of Chicago when I was there. That's small. There were like 30 of us out of a school of thousands of students. But when we take that idea, those small numbers, and we refer to an entire region, an entire historical event, okay, they lied about how many came over here on the ships, on the slavers. They lied about Abraham Lincoln freeing us.
Yep, that was a lie.
Folks need to read Vincent Harding's "There's a River," because he talks about how they really didn't have a choice because so many of us were escaping at the time that the Civil War began that it was a flood. They had no choice.
I grabbed that book, Baba.
Yeah, and in there for those folks who are walking around, and I see young warriors all the time, and it's painful to see them applauding John Brown. Because what John Brown wanted to set up, that's the question. Now, whether he wanted to involve us, we've been involved as fodder, as soldiers, as grunts in a lot of wars for Europeans. But the question is always what happens afterward. If you have folks who are walking around here switching, prancing, okay, winning this war for us, what is it going to be like for us when that war is over? Not whether they can fight or not, whether they can hold a gun or not. What's the mentality? What's the mentality? And John Brown's mentality was not black rule. John Brown fought against the idea of African sovereignty. He fought against it. He didn't just ignore it. He directly fought against it. He directly fought against the idea of Africans unless it was a region that they controlled. But we're walking around with pictures of John Brown like he saved us, like we have these 3 or 4 boys doing the freedom rides, and that's the first names you hear. Like it was them. We talk about the folks who were quote unquote the folks who were fighting to get us free in the South, the white folks, the organizations that they were part of.
Abolitionists, Bob.
Abolitionists. We started the abolition movement. The most revolutionary, and I'll use the word violent of those groups were us. We started them. But the ones who got the notoriety, of course, were theirs because they control the media, therefore they control what needs to be said, which means that we should not be listening to what that's the word we should be questioning everything. Okay? But I'm looking at this is like what was the other point that I wanted to make here before? Okay, here are some statistics for you. Let me pull up my PowerPoint for me, because I'm in the process of putting together a PowerPoint on our enslavement. I don't dare write another book like Kate Booker. That was too painful. Anybody talking about the average median age for enslaved Africans was 17? That means that half of the Africans on the plantations were 17 years or younger. Anybody talking about those statistics in our community? Any of these folks, any of these black folks who are trying to exonerate Europeans? Are they talking about that? Are they talking about the fact that even here in the state of Georgia, where the average winter temperatures are in the 50s and in the low 30s, that they were still out there? They were still out there in the snow. Anybody talk about the conditions of the African people on these plantations? I don't care if it was one. Is anybody talking about them? Okay. Is anybody talking about the conditions where you are born hungry? You spend your life hungry and you die hungry. Anybody talking about how the average age of Africans on the island of Haiti was 7 years from their point of arrival? 7 years. Read Jacob Carruthers. 7 years from your point of arrival. The average lifespan of an African on the island of Haiti was 7 years. Anybody talking about how we got this range in our complexion? Because I've never seen a picture of light-skinned black folks getting off the ships. That's got nothing to do with them. They didn't choose how they were born. That's irrelevant. Somebody will bring that up into the discussion. That's irrelevant. How did we get this range in the millions of us raped day in and day out? This feminist sister was talking about how if you were a black girl on the plantation and you were 12 or 13 and you hadn't been raped yet, then something about you was deformed. How do you think we got this range in complexion that we have in our community? And now we're volunteering to be raped. Heard her sister say she was upset with her ancestors, with her grandparents, her ancestors, because they had made themselves more presentable to Europeans to be raped. So she wouldn't have to be so dark. Now, anybody talking about what this psychologically has done to us? I'm not talking about roots type psychology. I'm talking about Sankofa type psychosis, psychotic psychosis, really. Menticide. Okay. There's no comparison between Roots, the movie Roots, and the movie Sankofa in terms of it explaining the damage that it did to us mentally and physically. And we're running from it as fast as we can. As escapists, we are running to whatever will allow us to go and hug Europeans, whatever will allow us to forget that they will kill for nothing, whatever will allow us that they are still destroying us. We're running to anything, any little stupid. This isn't even dumb to me because these are supposed to be scholars on this panel. They're supposed to be thinkers on this panel. And I know why academia wasn't part of that discussion, because they let the popular figures make the stupid points and then they're brought in if it needs to be supported.
Right.
Because they come out with these statistics first and don't explain them, then they come off to be stupid. So you're not going to hear the scholars, their scholars say, their scholars don't need to be. Well, we're not listening to the scholars anyway. We're listening to the basketball players, the TV stars, the movie makers. That's who we're listening to for our truth. We're listening to people who don't know anything about our story and know less about history to explain our situation and what we need to do with our children. How dumb can we be? You know, people who don't know anything about the enslavement of African people, don't know anything about hoe cakes where you cooked your dinner on a hoe from some batter that you got, and you hold that hoe over the fire and then you flip it like a pancake. That's your dinner. We're listening to people who don't know anything about the Maroons, so we assume that they were running from white folks so they could establish their white lands instead of reestablish something that's African. We're listening to the truth of liars, and we're acting like we're smart, and we're pretending. We are escapists. We are pretending that that's true, so we don't have to look at what really happened anymore. We don't have to imagine, because if we use our imaginations for a second, I could shut up. We could clearly see exactly what they did, and our thoughts would be underestimates. Our thoughts would be underestimates of what they have done to African people. What did it take? What did you have to do to people's minds, to that phrase goes, to move them from pyramids to projects? What would you have to do to the mind of genius to reduce it to the level that they look up to idiots for their wisdom? Go vote for idiots to take them to the promised land, to look to some white mountain instead of Kilimanjaro for their mountaintop. We have these new Negroes, in fact, back in the 40s, 30s, 40s, Alain Locke came out with a book, and he said, the new Negro. It's happening again. History repeats itself. History's repeating itself. We're doing everything in our power. And I would argue maybe some of them see what's coming. And they're trying to save themselves from what's coming by getting in close to Europeans. There's a male graduate student I knew who was with this European, and he explained to me, yeah, I'm with her. I want my children to be biracial because that'll give them a better chance for survival in this land. Well, that tells me that he knew what's going on in this land. The survey of University of Maryland students about 40 years ago, where these white boys were brought in and it was pretended that they had been discovered to be black, not white. And they asked them, how much would you expect in compensation now that you know that you're not white anymore, that you're black? And the lowest amount was $1 million. They understand our situation. Their job is to pretend and to make us think that they don't see what we know. That's their job. That's what they get on it to demonstrate to us. What you're seeing is wrong. You know, Dr. Baruti, yeah, they're high. There's something wrong with them. Because what they're talking about couldn't possibly be. Look, I live next door to Europeans. Somehow we forget to talk about what happened to the black males who tried to get back home to the integrated neighborhood when Katrina came through in Louisiana. We forget all about these real quick. And I'm a problem because I keep bringing it up. Europeans keep bringing up their history. They keep bringing up their story left and right. But if one of us brings up the truth, one of us talks about why the Smithsonian should not be torn apart in that way, why we shouldn't dismantle, why we should look at this brother who's walking around with a roll. We have a brother who's going around the country he's carrying a museum of our stuff with him, and most of us don't even know that he exists. He's been doing this for years. But we're going to run to theirs because it's theirs. And we know, just like we knew before, that the ice was colder in the white part of town. We know that their museums are going to be better than ours. I guess I'm harping on this because people will call me a reactionary because I refuse to accept Urugu's interpretation of reality. I automatically assume that they're lying. Then I dig. And occasionally I'm wrong.
Occasionally.
That may be 2% of the time. Maybe 2% of the time I'm wrong. But the vast majority, 98% of the time, I'm correct. When I dig. Just like the statistics I use in Kebuka. I use their statistics in Kebuka to show how even that was unbelievable. The children did some of the statistics in Kebuka. I wanted to show that even a child can see how flawed their statistics are. And a lot of us are buying again because we don't know statistics, but statistics are easy. And again, that's what I'm saying. Read the numbers essay in the Urizen book. It'll clear up a lot of stuff. It may take 2 or 3 reads, but you'll get it. You'll understand exactly how they use these statistics against us. There's a reason why they use the median now when they're talking about family structure, wealth, income, numbers, population, demographics, all the rest of that. There's a reason why they use the median now. When I was young, when I was 12, 13, 14, you didn't hear the median, you heard the mean. They switched it up for a reason. They switched it up because inequality has grown enormously. And the median hides inequality better. And I explain that in that chapter. I show you, I give you some statistics to show you that. Yeah, I want you to read it. Maybe I'm trying to sell the book. I don't know, but it's important for us to understand basic statistics. How to read a pie chart, how to read a histogram or a bar graph. It's like a condensed chunk of information. A condensed chunk of information right there in a chart, drawn out for you. A timeline drawn out for you. So you can look at it. But if you, and they've taught us to run from these things. You got the brother online who's trying to teach folks math. He's trying to teach folks math because he understands that, math is key. He understands that if we don't understand how to look at these things, if we run from them. Okay? So when I was a child, we don't want to look at those charts. It spelled trouble for our minds. we knew that they would probably make us look stupid because we wouldn't understand.
Right.
We have a lot of grown-ups walking around in our community with blinders on when it comes to statistics, where this 2% would have really seemed to be enormous. I mean, excuse me, extremely small. But in fact, that 2% is very enormous in terms of the population of Africans and Europeans in the South, as well as in the country period in 1865. And you do the same thing, you can do the same thing today with wealth.
True. You can, Baba. You can. I was going to say this, Baba, and black folks are firing back. They're like, they said the stat that she threw out there wasn't even true. They said in 1860, 1 out of 4 white families owned African captives. 1 out of 4, because they said that was like the law of the land back then. You know, that's what you did, you know. And so the number of white families who owned African captives, it increased over time. So they said by the time 1860 hit, 1 out of 4 white families owned an enslaved African, you know. And so, but I understand your point. You're saying, let's go with your number. Even if it was 2%,
if
look
you're
at how many, right? If you're going to say it, look at how many, you know, look at how many, Baba.
Yeah.
And then for them to say it wasn't that bad.
Right.
Where you're working people to death, where you're castrating black men, where you're cutting the babies out of the stomachs of black women, where you're raping men and women, because they rape both, where you got George Washington giving, what was it, syphilis or something? What was he giving to the African captives? I believe he was giving syphilis to them.
Yeah,
George Washington.
I was going to say George Washington Carver, he was castrated in order to be in a classroom with their daughters. You know, what they have done. That's why I never wrote a book on that. I was supposed to follow K. Booker immediately, but K. Booker took me out.
That's what you told me. It took you so
I couldn't, and I'm very sure I'm never going to write it. That was too painful, looking at just the surface, taking a superficial glance at what they had done to us, of what we know. And that's why I tell folks, you got to use your imagination. My mother would tell me, you never put anything past Europeans because they've done everything against us. You know, we don't. Even though, of course, they put down everything on paper.
Right.
You know, there's some things that they have on paper that they don't reveal, like Sigmund Freud's critique of Europeans in terms of them being innately barbaric. He wrote an essay. They hid it for like 30 years, 40 years. They hid it for decades. They would not publish it for decades. They hid it. And
Sigmund Freud, isn't he the father or the uncle of Eric Bernays, the father of propaganda?
He's the father of their psychiatry.
Oh,
Sigmund Freud, when you talk psychiatry, psychiatry, European, Sigmund Freud is the father.
But I thought he was related to Eric Bernays. I'm getting ready to Google that, but go ahead.
There's so many things people don't know. The Nobel Peace Prize. Nobel was a maker of arms. He was the one who took nitroglycerine, and turned it into gunpowder. Turned into dynamite.
Founded Baba.
One of his brothers was killed. One of Nobel's brothers was killed in one of Nobel's factories from an explosion. And now we're walking around Nobel Peace Prize.
Wow.
Wait, you said you found it?
I found it, Baba. The connection between Sigmund Freud and Eric Bernays that's his nephew. So like you said, Sigmund Freud, they called him the founder of psychoanalysis, and his nephew was Edward Bernays, and they regard him as the father of propaganda. So it's a connection there, Baba, but please continue to build.
Yeah. And that's a vital point that we're not ready for. That's one of the most important points we're not ready for. We're not ready for the concept of enemy. And we're not ready for the understanding that they're family, even if they're sleeping or you're sleeping in their bed. We're not. Menticide has us incapable of grasping the idea of Europeans being enemy. In the same way that Chancellor Williams said, when you see them on the horizon, that's the end of the discussion. They're already there. They're already in your, your head. They're already in your biz. They're already, unloading on you. They're already there. So, yeah, when I guess as I was studying this stuff years ago, the psychology was my favorite subject before. I had more hours undergrad in psychology and sociology because it was so interesting to me until I started psychoanalyzing myself, and then I started getting into trouble. But it's like
trouble, Bob.
Yeah, with myself. That's so I didn't need to leave that.
Right.
But it's there are key concepts that if we understood, so that if you don't understand white supremacy, you can't understand blah blah blah.
Everything. That's right.
Yeah. There are key concepts that we're not willing to look at because it will turn Europeans into what they are in our minds. It will make us see them for what they are. What was that? They Live, the movie They Live, where the guy put on the sunglasses and he could see these aliens for what they really look like. Oh, you guys got to watch They Live.
They Live. Okay.
They Live. It is yes. it's very good in terms of a fictional thought on what happens to warriors' minds when they understand the concept of enemy. And I'm talking about understanding the concept of enemy. Like Nana Johnny Clark said, we're not ready for war because we're not ready to kill family. That kind of concept of enemy. At that level of understanding, that's when you get those sunglasses and then put those sunglasses on. Then you can see exactly what they are. And that's what they don't want us to do. That's why they distract us in, meaningless discussions, because many of us don't have the equipment to really understand what they're about, what they're doing, what they have done. We're not ready for that. Most of us are not ready for that. Some of us, of course, are quite clearly ready, but most of us are not ready. Who's that? Asante Kwabena. Asante wrote a book, The Psychotechnology of, I can't remember, but he's also the one who wrote come on, memory. He's also the one who wrote the Lynch Letter.
Okay, the Willie Lynch letter.
Yeah, he's the one that did that. But he talks about fear. He talks about the that you are born with fear. And I have a little difference in him, but I understand what he's saying. I believe that we're born with a fear of height, and most psychology agrees with me on that one. It's something that we quickly learn, quickly get out of. But most people are born with a fear of heights, extreme heights, not just jump off a chair or table. Which reminded me, and I know it's got nothing to do with it, but the picture of the sisters were talking about the other day, where the sisters see the sisters see the brother throwing the baby up in the air, and the baby's like half a mile up, and they're scared, but the baby really only went up like 2 or 3 feet. That kind of way up there, scared, fear of height. I don't know where that came from, but it came anyway.
I got you, Baba.
He talked about how the main reason why we are in the situation that we're in has to do with fear, and fear is a result of constant violence against your mind and your body. Sort of like suicide. People commit suicide because there's something about them, or something about life, or something about their treatment, something that they see as horrible, and they don't believe that they can do anything about it. And they don't want to live with it forever. So they'll commit suicide. Whatever that thing is that bad. And they don't feel that they can correct it. So this fear moved African people into a state of mind where we can be sane, if you will, but still be guided by that fear. Okay? And that's it. Most of us don't want to admit it. Even most of us don't want to admit that we walk around with Urugu at our center, where we think about what we want to do and how we want to do based upon the consequences that we will receive from Urugu. or Urugu's agents, whatever they are, police, teachers, whatever. Okay. To walk around like that, and that's not only your norm, but that's the norm for most of you. So if you stop acting like that, people look at you like you're crazy. If you stop walking around in fear, suddenly something's wrong with you. We've seen it in our families. We've seen it in quote unquote friends. We've seen it in co-workers. We've seen it all over. When you start acting like you are not in fear, then Black folks get scared. First for you, but secondly for them if they're in proximity. I went off on this European female at the Dothan, Alabama airport because the rental that I had was leaking water into the car. And she didn't want to do anything about it, so I raised my voice,
right,
and began to explain to her what was going to happen to her job. I'm getting on with corporate now.
Right. How you gonna give me a rental car with water leaking in it? Like, you just want me to accept everything, and then you'll be blaming me when I bring the car back. It was my fault. You know, come on, man.
There was a Black guy in the airport in the area. I saw him panic. I saw him panic because he knew that something bad was getting ready to happen to me. It didn't, but he knew because he's had a life of fear and he has adjusted to that. So we see the fear response when we are confronted by European authority. And people can say, you got all these humanists and these, we are all kinds of groups of Black folks who want to pretend that they're fighting for all of us, that they're on the front line trying to serve all of us, but that all centers on Urugu. It doesn't intimidate Urugu. In fact, Urugu's a part of them, but it doesn't intimidate Urugu. That's hard. That's hard to make people understand because the only possibility of them understanding it is when they're in one of those situations and they're of the mind to understand, oh, okay, that's enemy. I expect that from them. Then they can see their fear. You can't see your fear in other people. You think that they're crazy or you feel sorry for them or what have you. But our fear is deep. It goes way past post-traumatic slave syndrome. It's like from our first contact with these freaks. Okay, this hasn't been building for 12, 20 generations. This has been building for hundreds of generations. I want to say, when I say from our first contact, then I get in trouble because when they were our first contact, they were coming to us to get educated. But I'm talking about our first contact where they were beginning to put that vision of global domination in their heads. That occurred during the time of Kemet, early in the time of Kemet. Okay? That's been a long time. That's been a long time coming. It took a long time, starting way before the pyramids, for us to get from the pyramids to the projects, from the top to the bottom. And it's like what, children can adjust to a lot of things. They can adjust to, all kinds of abuse. They can adjust to all kinds of self-hatred. They can adjust to all kinds of violence, like they're making them adjust to now through the media.
To the media, absolutely, Bob.
Children can adjust to all kinds. And when we look at them as centered scholars, objectively, we can see what happened to us. We lost sight of who we are. And then we reached the point where we didn't want to see who we are, because in seeing who we are, it would pit us against those people who we saw as God. Okay. Unlike Europeans who think that they can get into a fight with the creator, however we conceive it, and win. Look at their mythology. We've never been there. We've never been that. We've worked with creation.
Absolutely.
They want to control it. Just like they want to control nature. They want to control Asasiya and treat her like she's to be raped. We've never been there. And that's still part of us. Maybe buried deep down, but that's still part of us. We're I'll say breaking free, and that's not a good thing. We're breaking free from the mind of Africa. We're becoming more European in our thinking, in our doing, in our rationalizing. So pretty soon, and I'm not negative. Pretty soon, if things keep going the way they're going, you're going to have clusters of us who are aware on the continent, Australia, here, Brazil, in Europe. But you have to have been here for a while to have seen it. You have to have been here, let's say 60, 70 years to have seen the average tone of the Black man's voice get higher.
Yes, Baba. It's oh my goodness. When I listen to I said, hell, my voice is deeper than some of their voices, Baba. I'm like, golly, the high-pitched voice. You don't know if you're on the phone talk. Bobby, I've seen it just in my 44 years. I've seen it. And I'm listening to these guys. I'm like, dang, they don't sound like my pops. They don't sound like my daddy.
Yeah.
No bass, Baba. No bass. No bass. No bass.
None whatsoever. And that's become the norm. And it's going to become more of the norm because those people who are put up in front of us in leadership positions and positions of authority as the newscasters, as the teachers, this is what has happened to them. And our sons are going to, and well, I know our daughters, they have issues as well, but our sons are going to grow up to the best of their ability to do that. And it'll be to a point where it's not fake. This is how the vocal cords were trained from birth.
Yeah, that's how it was. Like you said, that's how it is.
Yeah. So we can't see it. So we assume, and I'll close on this point that Enia made.
Yes.
She was in a class at Morehouse and she came home upset. And the reason why she came home upset was it was all part of one discussion where this theology student in her class questioned whether Africans had any kind of culture. Period. There was no culture. And then they got into a discussion about what's going on now. And you're not supposed to as a teacher, but she talked to them about morals, ethics, all the rest of these things. They would look at her like she was crazy and she came to the conclusion, and I agree. She came to the conclusion that what they see now is the way they believe it's always been.
Facts, Baba. I can see that.
So when that's the way we operate, especially in this rush world where you're trying to just get far away from the past as quickly as you can, where anything but tradition, when you're running at breakneck speed to get away from the past, then what you see now is the only way that we've ever been. This is how we've always walked. Okay. There was a time where I could see a sister walking down the street. I know that's a sister. And if I saw a brother walking down the street, I would know that's a brother.
Not anymore.
You can't do that anymore. When I see a brother walking down the street like a brother, I get proud. I get proud. I'm sitting in the car. Yeah. I see a sister walking like a sister should walk, like they've walked all of my life. Yeah, that's a sister. Okay, it's like, but we don't see the changes because they're incremental.
Yeah, it is incremental.
Next thing we know. For me, next thing I know, it's here, and I'm wondering, what happened to you? You got this little male homo frowning at you like he wants to kill you, and I'm like, really, son?
Really, son?
But now that's the way of the world, and it's it's not a part of the world that I'm part of. So, as social scientists, the most important thing for us to be able to do is understand the past, so that we can see where things are going. As like on the weather forecast. If you don't know where things have been, then you can't tell where they're at right now.
That's right.
So you can't know what to do because you don't know what's coming. You have no idea. And if you're listening to lies in terms of determining what has happened and what's going on now, then your future is going to look the same way. Because you're going to interpret it the same way, even if it's not the case. So if the military turned on us, you're not going to have the expression that the Japanese had when the tanks and the trucks came rolling through their internment camps. They were in shock. We're going to be asking, can I join? Can I help to, exploit them? I mean, that's not my people are all people, i.e. my people are white people. So, it's like I really ask folks to get a copy of your reason. especially read the chapter relative to the statistics on entitled Numbers.
This book right here. Hold on, Bob. I'm going to pull it up because I know you got to get ready to go. Here it is. Your Reason. Let me show the website real fast, family. Make sure that you head on over here to akabenhouse.com. This is the book, and I'm going to drop the link in the chat, by the way. This is the link to the website. And Your Reason, Baba,
it's gonna keep going, keep going, keep going. Okay. Next one, yeah. What is it? Keep there to the all the way to the right, the gray one.
Right here.
The gray one. With the world map right side up.
Oh man, it says an African-centered critique of Eurocentric social sciences. Yeah, I'm grabbing this, Baba. I gotta grab this. Family, I'm dropping a link to the book in the chat. Grab this book, family. Grab this book. Also, Baba, you know, we had to plug Kebuka.
Yes.
We had to plug Kebuka. The only way, yeah, and the only way we can fight this, here it is. Here's Kebuka, family. I'm gonna drop this link in the chat. Grab Kebuka. And Baba, it took, I know you said it took a lot out of you. When I read it, I had to put it down a couple of times, Baba. I couldn't read it all the way through. And I remember you told me when I was reading it not to read it at night. You said, don't read it at night. You said, don't do that. And I see why. I see why, Baba. This book was informative, family, and it was deep. So make sure that you click on the links in the chat. Grab these two books. Also, Bob, I'm going to make sure that I put those books, little links to those two books in the description of this video so people who are watching it, who watch it later, will have access to it. So let me drop a bomb for you real quick, Bob.
Fire! 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 Fire!
Baba Madase Pai, Asante Sana, for taking time out of your schedule to be with us tonight, to inform us, to educate us, to uplift us. Baba, I thank you. I thank you. I thank you. Because I know you have a lot going on. When I was emailing you back and forth, you're like, look, I got a lot going on, but I will be there on Sunday. And then you inbox me and you're getting ready to actually jump on something else. And so, Baba, I thank you. I thank you from the bottom of my heart. Asante Sana, Baba.
Kichu, and I appreciate you inviting me on. Always love it. Bibi Fahodier.
Always a pleasure, Baba. Bibi Fahodier. All right, family. So you heard from Baba Baruti. I had to call him, family. When I was looking at that nonsense online, Jillian Michael trying to say slavery wasn't that bad. Only 2% of white Americans own slaves. And Donald Trump, followed up with, yeah, it wasn't that bad. America was not that bad and all that foolishness. I knew who to call. And I called the right person, right? I called out Baba Baruti, who's been writing about this for years. And so, family, make sure that you grab this book, Kebuka. And look, I don't ask you all to grab anything that I haven't read. I don't know if you can see it's the bright light. I don't know if you can see the marks and stuff. I've read this book, man, and I actually committed to read it. I commit myself to reading this book every November. And that's when Baba Baruti does his Kebuka down in Atlanta. And so I took my son down to his Kebuka. I don't want to call it an event. I would rather call it a memorial, if you will, maybe a memorial service, remembering our ancestors, remembering the Middle Passage. And so I actually took my family down there to Atlanta, and we witnessed it. We experienced it. And I said to myself, every November, I'm going to read Kebuka, right? Just to keep that in my mind, just to keep in the forefront of my mind what our ancestors went through, family. Because a lot of us forget. We forget we're in our own world, right? We got our families, we have our jobs, we're trying to pay bills, but we forget about what our ancestors went through until stuff like this pops up, right? Where Jillian Michaels is saying, only 2% of 2% of white American owned slaves. Another thing, family, is this. There was somebody in the chat who made the comment, Dr. Ma'at, all African Americans weren't enslaved. We know it was free blacks or free black Americans who existed. But under what conditions did they exist? And how many were there, sir or ma'am? Right? Do you understand that the line was blurred, really, between free blacks and enslaved blacks? And free blacks were still controlled, just as if they were enslaved. So what are you saying right now? Everybody wasn't enslaved, Dr. Ma'at. Well, what kind of system, what system did they exist in? Were they in control? Were they just walking down the street willy-nilly doing their thing? The lines were blurred. You had free black people who even got enslaved. They lived or were born as free blacks, but then they got enslaved. Come on, family. We got to stop this nonsense. You know, I think some of us are so, I don't know. I agree with Bob. A lot of us are really complicit in trying to change the narrative. You got fools online saying that, I call them slavery deniers. You got people online denying that slavery never existed, right? So one minute you're talking reparations, then the next minute you're saying we were always here, slavery never happened. Well, what the hell are you asking reparations for, right? If slavery never happened, what are you asking reparations for, right? Like, what are you asking for? What is the demand for? So you got some fools online saying that slavery never happened. Then you got fools online saying that the great Harriet Tubman never existed. You got fools online saying that Nat Turner never existed. That all of these people are fictitious characters. And when I say people saying this, it's people who look like you and I putting out those false narratives. So family, we got to stop. Family, we got to stop. And the only way to stop this foolishness is with knowledge. But thank you for pulling up on me, family. I'll be live again next Sunday at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, family. Make sure that you pull up on me, okay? And before you get out of here, I just need you to do a few things for me. First of all, thumb up this video. Thumb it up, thumb it up, thumb it up. And then also, family, share this video, okay? Share it. Copy the link, throw it on your social media pages. Baba Baruti went in. It was a beautiful build. So we want to share it. We want to each one teach one. So share it on your social media platforms. Copy the link. Throw it in your friends group chat or your family group chat. And lastly, before you get out of here, family, make sure that you subscribe to my YouTube channel and hit the notification bell so that whenever I go live, you will be notified. Ancestors will, and I'll see you next Sunday at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Have a beautiful Black-tastic week. Peace and Black African excellence.
Let's combat and fight back with maltracks. The war of the minds, they want control of the masses. And Common Core, they dumb us down in the classes. Without knowledge, we can't gain access. Build with the elders, take notes and write classics. We keep whining on the block, how it's gonna stop? Let's start supporting our own, make their supply drop. We buy stocks, then we buy blocks. Cause we know the truth and we tuned in to Dr. Maya.